Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the Doll of the Devil. This is the name being given to the creepy doll that caused a stir on the internet in 2018. Footage of a vampire doll that follows you with its eyes went viral after the demon doll appeared on an unmarked tombstone in Mexico. You know what? I don't like the sound of this. Oh, but it gets even worse. The doll was found with a baby bottle of blood next to it. I'm not even sure if this is the original video, but footage uploaded to YouTube by RM Videos shares the creepy doll, and it's had over 330,000 views. Look how its eyes really bore into your soul. Who watching this video would touch that doll? Yeah, rather you than me, mate. Coming in at number 9, we have Mandy. Mandy is one of the more notorious haunted dolls. I'm actually pretty creeped out just looking at her, to be honest. It's all about her cracked face, her knitted bonnet, and that creepy little lamb. They're enough for me to basically want nothing to do with her, but as I'm here hosting a top 10 video, I kind of have to give you the story. Sucks to be me. Alright. So, Mandy is said to date back to the 1920s and is thought to have come from Germany. Somehow, she travelled all the way to Canada, and in 1991 she was donated to a museum in British Columbia. Why was she given to a museum? Well, her previous owner thought that she was possessed. She said she would wake up at night to hear a baby crying and that the windows in her home would miraculously open. After she gave away the doll, the crying and the window opening stopped, but strange things started happening in the museum. Workers also heard crying, and weirdly some staff members would find their lunch had disappeared. I'm sorry, but ain't nobody messing with my lunch. In one truly terrifying turn of events, that little toy lamb was found outside of Mandy's case. How'd it get there? Well, paranormal investigators say that Mandy is possessed by the spirit of a child, but she isn't actually a menace, just playful. Nonetheless, I think I would keep my hands off her. Coming in at number 8, we have the Wedding Scratcher. I already don't feel super great about a porcelain doll dressed as a bride. It kinda combines all of my fears of corpse brides, Miss Havisham, and spooky haunted dolls, making it a bit of a trio of doom. Speaking of doom, this bride doll bought it in bounds for a family who bought the doll for £5 in a charity shop in the United Kingdom. 50-year-old Debbie Merrick brought the China doll, but then she got way more than she bargained for. It started bringing chaos and misfortune into her home. She placed the doll on display in the spare room, but since the doll moved in, her husband began waking up with scratches all over his legs. He also had started having dreams that the doll dragged him across the floor. Debbie has also been having nightmares about the doll and says that since she came to be in their home, their smoke alarm frequently goes off. In the end, she decided, you know what, I'm just putting that doll up for sale. Good riddance. Coming in at number 7, we have dead dolls. Less curse, more, well, actually dead people turned into dolls, which, I mean, really, do you want to go touching that? No. Anatoly Moskvin brought to life the Russian urban legend of a nasty corpse collector. It seemed that the 44-year-old took to grave robbing young dead girls, which he then turned into dolls. How? Well, he mummified the girls, dressed them up, and placed them around his room. Of course, this super creep of a middle-aged man still lived with his parents, and somehow his illicit activities went unnoticed by them. He managed to convince his mum and dad that he had a thing for big dolls. At this point, when your son's 44 and still living at home and gets a thing for big dolls, is it not time to stage an intervention? I think so. Moskvin would film the corpse dolls and zoom up close into their faces, apparently obsessed with his creations. Eventually, Russian police cottoned on to what he was doing and raided his home, where they found the robbed corpses of 26 females aged between 3 and 15. Disgusting. Their families must have been distraught to learn their dead children had been defiled in this way. When I die, please don't turn me into a doll. I don't want that. I don't need that. Coming in at number 6, we have this ELMO doll. I can't believe it has been almost 10 years since an ELMO doll made headlines for threatening to kill a toddler. I remember reading about it at the time. I can't believe time's flown so much. So ELMO, as many of you may know, is a Muppet puppet from Sesame Street. A while back, a bunch of ELMO dolls that could talk and say your name were released. Now 2-year-old James Bowman was the proud owner of a doll, and he enjoyed ELMO saying his name so much that he quickly ran the batteries down. When the batteries were replaced by his mum, for some reason the doll stopped just saying his name, instead out of nowhere, it started saying, "Kill James." Okay. The 2-year-old then even started repeating the doll, saying "Kill James," which you can imagine totally and utterly freaked his mum out. She did what all good mothers would do and tossed the evil cursed doll right on out of there, although not before footage of the creepy toy in action was recorded and distributed to the press. Have a listen.
Kill James? Kill James?
Yeah, I don't feel good about that. His mum said that she was kind of distraught and I mean, I'll say. Coming in at number 5 we have Robert. What a classic. While I usually love a good nautical theme, I am absolutely not here for this sailor doll. Robert is a 20th century doll that used to belong to a child called Eugene Otto. Eugene used to blame many naughty things he did on Robert, and the pair would often be overheard talking, with Eugene's parents assuming Robert's voice was really Eugene. When Eugene died in 1974, Robert was left in an attic and discovered by the next owners of the home, who had a 10-year-old daughter. The small girl was terrified of Robert and claimed he wanted to kill her. Neighbours of the house would swear they saw Robert at the window on occasion, and a plumber who worked at the house found the doll to move across the room on its own. A reporter from the area, Malcolm Ross, visited the house to see Robert and was disturbed to sense that Robert was listening to his conversation, and he even thought he was understanding him. Legend has it that this doll has caused car accidents, broken bones, made people lose their jobs, get divorced, and more. Robert is now in a museum in Florida's Key West, and museum visitors supposedly experience post-visit misfortunes for failing to respect Robert. So do you know what? Maybe don't even look at Robert, let alone touch him. He does not like disrespect. Another doll you should never look at is Peggy. Peggy will make you sick, and she is coming into number 4. So Peggy is a haunted doll residing in the UK in Shrewsbury, Shropshire to be precise. Peggy is owned by paranormal investigator Jane Harris, who runs an organisation called Haunted Dolls. That's what it says on the tin. Really. She was given Peggy by a terrified woman who couldn't cope with the burden of the doll. Peggy is thought to have the power to visit people in their dreams, warning them or haunting them. Mediums who have worked with Peggy believe that she is linked to the Holocaust, and Jane believes that she died of respiratory issues, possibly a gassing. In 2015, Peggy caused a media stir when an article was published about her on the Mail Online, after which 80 readers reported having an awful experience after viewing her picture. Most were nausea, but some people even had panic attacks. Peggy is said to be haunted by an evil spirit. Now Jane, her owner, did ask the doll to stop tormenting people, but apparently one woman even had a heart attack shortly after meeting her. Yikes. Coming in at number 3 we have Victorian mourning dolls. We're lucky we're living in the age we do, as 150 years or so ago things were not so great. During the Victorian era, child mortality rates were high. As a result, the Victorians dealt with death in a pretty different way than we do now. In the late 19th century, it became habitual to have a mourning doll made and laid at the grave of a dead child. The dolls were usually made of wax, and their hair was generally made from the hair of the deceased, which is pretty creepy. The doll would also be dressed in the deceased's clothes and mourned as if they were a real child. These dolls were then often kept in a container by bereaved families. Now I'm not saying that they're necessarily cursed, but they were the physical representation of a dead child made with the child's real hair. I for one would not go touching them. Alright, less spooky in kind of a ghostly way, but very spooky in a real life do you wanna kill me way, we have Snack Time Cabbage Patch Kid at number 2. Now these were the true menaces of the 1990s. Sure, they might not be haunted or possessed by a demon, but these dolls were the real demon here. Why? Well, because they tried to eat the kids they belonged to. So the story goes that these dolls were released in 1996, and they were designed to make the doll look like they could eat. Plastic fries and various other fake foods were included, and kids could feed them and the doll would chew them. Sounds great, but unfortunately the doll couldn't tell the difference between a plastic fry and a kid's finger, and you know how much children love sticking their fingers in stuff. There were several complaints from parents of children with injured fingers. Kids would obviously stick their fingers in the doll's mouth. The doll would bite down, clamping so hard the kids couldn't always get their fingers out. There were a number of reports in the mid-90s of kids getting their fingers and other body parts stuck in the mouth of the devil dolls, and one girl even got an unwelcome haircut when the doll mulched up a significant proportion of her hair. Over 100 complaints were received, so the doll was recalled and $40 refunds were offered. To be honest, I'd rather have my finger than $40. Finally, coming into number 1, we have one of the most famous dolls of all time. Never touch her. It's Annabelle. On first viewing, I kind of thought that Annabelle, a Raggedy Ann doll, was pretty cute looking, but then when you realise that this is the doll behind the Annabelle movie franchise, all cute goes out of the window and is replaced with cold hard fear. For all her supposedly evil biddings, Annabelle is currently in a glass jail in the form of a sealed box at the Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. The museum is run by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they received the doll after it lived with a student nurse and her roommate in the 1970s. The doll behaved strangely, so the pair contacted a medium who suggested that she was haunted by a dead girl named Annabelle Higgins. The pair felt a great deal of empathy and tried to nurture and care for the girl, but it turned out she was a malicious and evil spirit, leading to the pair giving the doll away. It's a bit less stressful than the movie makes it sound, but nonetheless I really wouldn't fancy being the bearer of this plushy menace. There is a reason she's locked behind glass, because you should never touch this smiling devil. You just don't know what she could do to you. And I like it.
Starting us off at number 10 is Daisy. Now I think it's pronounced Daisy. DEISY? Not really sure. So back in November of 2018, Beliz, a woman from Peru, said she owned a doll that was so jealous of her boyfriend that it caused him to leave her. The doll named Daisy was given to her as a Christmas gift and can apparently move by itself and knocks things over whenever it wants. The day after she got her, all of Daisy's hair apparently just fell out somehow. One day Beliz said she suddenly saw a bright light right after her Bible fell off the TV and she just burst into tears. She saw that she was surrounded by shadows and her dad ran over to hug her. When she looked up, her face was covered in cuts supposedly inflicted by Daisy. Her boyfriend decided to leave her because he would feel like he was getting physically beat up every night, and he knew it was because of the doll. Now I personally would get rid of it, but Beliz is too scared to do so, so I feel like someone needs to help her out, you know, come in clutch, get rid of that thing, burn it alive maybe, I don't know. Coming in at number 9 is 2 out of 100. Alabama-based paranormal enthusiast Ashley Nicole Fine has a collection of 100 haunted dolls, 2 of which absolutely despise her boyfriend Philip. Ashley claims the 2 dolls that hate Philip are possessed by 2 women that were murdered by their own boyfriends, and so just the sight of Philip pisses them off, which I mean is fair enough, I get it. If you're killed by a boy, you probably will hate them. I get it. One of the dolls is possessed by a woman called Mirabella and the other one by a woman called Setha. Ashley shared that Mirabella told her that she had been strangled by a jealous lover and then dumped into a lake. The dolls have attacked Philip during the night because he'd wake up with scratches all over his body, and the dolls had moved from where she had kept them, so clearly they were to blame. And they weren't deep bloody scratches by any means, but they were still worrying enough to cause concern. But Ashley has been collecting these dolls since she was 12 and said she would always choose the dolls over any boyfriend she had. Dolls come first, boyfriend comes second. Does Ashley have her priorities right? Let me know in the comments below. At number 8 we have the Colourful Flame. This one was shared by redditor Buddha42, who said her and her husband moved into a fixer-upper house and had to clean out all the previous tenants' crap. They threw out most things but decided to keep this porcelain doll, thinking they could maybe sell it on eBay or something for a few extra bucks. They left her at the back of their walk-in closet, but she started just appearing all over the house. The husband thought the wife was moving it and vice versa, but then one morning they woke up and it was just standing on top of their TV, just looking straight at them. They grabbed it and put it on the kitchen table and went out for a cigarette because obviously they were stressed. They need a stress cigarette. I get it, I've been there. When they came back, she was on top of the fridge, so they were like, oh hell no! They got a hammer and smashed it to pieces, but instead of the pieces flying everywhere and towards the line of impact, they went straight into the couple's face and cut them both. Angry and pissed off now, they took the doll outside, doused her in lighter fluid and lit her on fire. But the fire kept changing colors. It went from pink to blue to green, purple, and all the while they felt like they could hear this high-pitched scream in the back of their minds. When they got back into the house, they found pieces of the doll's face on their bed in the arrangement of her face with their blood on it, despite literally just burning her, including her face pieces. Filling at number 7 slot is Letta. Letta honestly looks really bloody creepy, I'm not even gonna lie to you. He's wearing this silky dark green suit and is the size of a child. He's meant to be 200 years old and is made from real human hair and carved wood. I feel like if he's made from real hair, then obviously the person whose hair that was is still attached to the doll somehow. Like, that's just how haunting attachment works. I've done enough top 10s to know that. When it comes in clutch. Either way, Kerry Walton has owned Letta since the 70s when he found him in an abandoned house in Australia. When he brought him home, everything kinda went tits up, expectedly. Like, are we really surprised? No, we're not. Things would start moving, there were scratch marks all over the floor, Kerry's children would have nightmares constantly. One night his daughter woke up screaming saying Letta had moved on his own, and he had. He was right by her bed. She claimed the doll grabbed her finger with a strength she never imagined and would not let go. And I mean, the bruises on her finger explained it all. Say no more, I believe you. Get rid of that. Now at number 6 is the China doll. Now back in 2017 there was a major bidding war going on eBay over a haunted China doll. Debbie Merrick, the initial owner of the doll, shared on ITV that the doll would set off her fire alarm, take off her own necklace, and would scratch her partner any chance she got. Now Lee Steer managed to win with his bid of £866 and the doll was soon shipped to him. First of all, who the hell would pay that much for a doll? Like, no. But after 2 days of being in the same house with her, Lee's father woke up with scratches all over his arms, very similar to those inflicted on Debbie's partner. The scratches seemed to be the same size as the doll's hand, despite the fact they hadn't even unboxed her yet. Lee said since she's been in the house, he's been hearing weird noises and things keep breaking despite no one actually being behind them breaking. What's happening? Coming in at number 5 is Charley. Now this doll was discovered in the attic of a Victorian home in New York back in 1986. The doll named Charley was locked in a trunk that dated back to the 30s, and with it came a piece of paper with the Lord's Prayer on it, which, I mean, if you're finding a doll with a note of scripture, chances are you need to douse it in holy water. Charley himself is yellowed from age, one of his eyes has rubbed off, and he low-key looks like he's wearing a straitjacket, and I'm pretty sure that wasn't for fashion. Now family ended up getting the doll and placed it on display along with their other ones. However, mere days after they got him, he started swapping positions and knocking the other toys off the shelf. The youngest daughter of the family claimed Charley would speak to her at night, but the parents dismissed it. Well, they dismissed it until she woke up one day with deep slashes all over her body, and then they were like, maybe she's not bullshitting after all, maybe we should listen to her. They locked the doll up in their attic after that, and then donated it to an oddity shop in Salem. So you can visit it if you want, but why would you? At number 4 is Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls. Now this island is just south of Mexico City and it has quite the story. Don Julian Santana Barrera was the caretaker of the island, and one day he found a little girl drowned in the water. He had no idea how she had died and was unable to save her. A few hours later, he saw a doll floating near the canal which he assumed was most likely that girl's. Out of respect for the girl, he took the doll and hung it on one of the trees on the island, and that's how it all began. Now after that point, it said that Julian started getting haunted by the girl, and in an attempt to appease her spirit, he started hanging more dolls around the island. Those close to Julian said he changed after that period. It's like an unseen force started driving him to make these dolls his life. After 50 years of collecting dolls and hanging them, Julian was found drowned in the exact same place he had found that girl's body 50 years prior. Now many believe Julian made up the story in his solitude, but I highly doubt that. That's very inventive if he did. People believe the spirit of the girl, Julian, and the dolls heavily haunt and protect the island. Many have seen the dolls move and have heard whispers coming from them, and most believe it was the original first doll that drove both Julian and the girl to drown. Filling at number 3 slot is the German doll. Now this one was shared by Paranormal Alien 85 on Reddit, who said she had bought a doll from her daughter, not knowing its origins came from Germany in the 40s. As in right smack dab in the middle of World War II, so that's not ideal. When the doll finally came, she looked harmless enough, but that very same night, the mum had a very vivid dream. She and her partner saw their daughter and sister stuck inside a Nazi concentration camp, and despite seeing them, they just couldn't do anything to save them. The daughter also happened to be holding the doll in her hand, even though that probably wouldn't have happened in real life. I highly doubt they were allowed any toys in the camps. Let alone, they probably weren't even allowed to smile or laugh, really. Either way, her boyfriend somehow tripped on something while running away from the camp, and his eye popped out of his socket. Like the user remembered it dangling from the socket in vivid detail. When they woke up the next morning, the user's partner woke up with a bloody eye. How? No one knows, but I'm guessing it's the doll. Now at number 2 is Annabelle. Yes, she is a real possessed doll. The movie was based on a true story, which makes it that much more terrifying. The real story takes place in the year 1970 when a mum bought her daughter a Raggedy Ann doll from an antique store. The daughter put the doll in her bed and just left her there. But soon enough, the doll started changing position, and initially they thought it was because the bed was being nudged by a roommate, but they very quickly changed their minds. Annabelle would change rooms and leave notes around the house which read "Help Lou" and "Help Me." They lived in a home with other people, and the doll even strangled one of the housemates' fiancés in his bed. The last straw was when they came home one night to discover the doll covered in blood. Whose blood? Who the hell knows? The duo called an expert who told them the spirit of the doll was called Annabelle and that she was a 7-year-old girl that was murdered years beforehand and was just left to rot in a field where the apartment now currently stood. The apartment in which they lived. The spirit told the expert medium it wanted to stay and be loved, and so the housemates decided to keep it. Not knowing that there was no little girl inside of it, it was just in fact a demon with behavioral problems. Very different to a little girl that had been murdered. Stark difference. And finally, at number 1 is the roommate. This one comes from Reddit user KKHoliday07, who said their college roommate's sister decided to buy a haunted doll off the internet. And she was fully aware that it could be a complete hoax, and that was honestly what she was expecting, so when the reality was so different, she was shocked. As soon as she got the doll, things around her house were never the same. She started having intense violent nightmares, her dog started throwing up blood despite the vet saying he was completely healthy and normal, and the girl started hearing voices that would tell her to harm herself, and she ended up being admitted into a mental institution and is still there 8 years later, all because of this one purchase.
At number 10 we have Harold. If you're a fan of haunted dolls for some weird reason, then you should probably be aware of Harold. Also, if you're a fan of haunted dolls, can I ask why? Have you ever had like chicken and waffles? Like there's better things than haunted dolls. You should probably give that up and try something else. But I mean, to each his own. But anyways, this little tyrant has been on a tear ever since he was purchased off of eBay by a horror movie director. The director wanted to buy him as an inspiration, but quickly became too much to handle. The director was plagued by horrible dreams, and when he would look at Harold, he would feel sick to his stomach. So he did what any reasonable person would do, and he sold him to an unsuspecting person. Very rude. I don't understand why people don't just burn these dolls when they get them. Just end the cycle. The world already has the dangers of like World War III on the horizon. We don't need haunted dolls kicking it up a notch, you know what I'm saying? Well, Harold got passed down the line to a few different people, and as he made his way, he left his mark. One person died from falling down the stairs, and another owner died from lung cancer. Now Harold is being kept by a team of paranormal experts, and let's hope he doesn't get loose anytime soon. At number 9 we have Amanda the doll. This doll has some creepy lifeless eyes like every girl I have ever dated. Just look at this doll and tell me you wouldn't think it was ready to kill you. No doll has flowing locks and a good heart. That hair is there just so you ignore the fact that she is oozing hatred. And the red suit, she's on a glow up to ruin your life. This doll refuses to quit, and she's on a never-ending reign of terror. She has been sold over 20 times on eBay since 2003. Everyone who gets her is like, nope, that's the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and just passes her on. Also, she was built in 1884 and has been causing havoc ever since then. That's almost 150 years of ruining lives. Part of me kind of supports it. If you're a doll and you look that good after 150 years, then you must be doing something right. Maybe she's only ruining people's lives because they're just the roadblocks on her trip to greatness. Maybe she's just queening that hard. If you're wondering what kind of torment she has been bringing to the table, well, she has scratched people in their sleep, she'll give you horrible nightmares, and on top of all that, she will have a creepy demonic grin when she looks at you at night. So if you have any enemies out there, maybe you should get this for them for Christmas next year. At number 8 we have ONDINE French swimming dolls. Alright, just look at this doll. It's just such a horror show. These things were made in 1895 and were supposed to replicate a swimming baby, but they look more like the girl from The Exorcist trying to slide on her belly. If you invited me over and I saw one of these in your home, I'd be like, yeah, no thanks. I think I'm gonna go throw rocks at a bear. It's probably safer than hanging around that thing. I read one report about one of these dolls being cursed, and that anyone who'd owned it would drown, which seems very fitting since these dolls were supposed to simulate someone swimming, but they couldn't float because the material they used to make them was too heavy. They haven't gotten to plastic around that time yet. It's almost like the curse was put on the doll ironically. Now I couldn't track down the exact doll, and I read through a couple of reports. All of them had different names for the doll. One called it Claudette, another called it Michelle. So this is either a fake story or there's more than one cursed doll crab walking around the world. Ugh. At number 7 we have Mandy. This is one of the most famous dolls locked away in Canada. We actually have a bunch of ghost stuff up here in the Great White North. We just don't get bugged by it because even the ghosts don't like to go out in the cold. Mandy has been on display at the Quinzel Museum in British Columbia for quite some time now. She is really the main attraction over there, and if you go to see her, be prepared to be immediately creeped out. People say she follows you with her eyes and will even wink at you. I think this doll is hitting on me. Huh? Since she has been on display at the museum, she hasn't done anything too disturbing, but the last person who owned Mandy was kept up by constant crying. Sounded like there was a crying baby around her at all times. And they didn't even have a baby. So Mandy likes the route of psychological attack. Very smart. At number 6 we have Robert. The creepiest thing about this doll is that it has the same name as the original owner. Some people think that this has linked the owner's soul to the doll. The owner's name was Robert Otto, and he first was gifted the doll when he was just young. Immediately upon owning the doll, Otto said that the thing would speak to him. When it was in his possession, it never did anything horrible, but now that it's on display at a museum, it has been a little bit more vicious. If people come through and take a picture of Robert without asking permission, he will curse them and their lives will start to fall apart. I guess there are several different ways you can attack people. At number 5 we have the Bleeding Eye doll. Animal Planet did a special on hauntings, and one episode followed a little girl named Brianna and her mother Joan. Like most little girls, Brianna had a baby doll that she would play with all of the time. For the most part, it was a completely innocent thing until one day Brianna brought the doll to her mom and told her that she needed to clean it because blood was coming out of the eyes. At first she thought this must have been her daughter's doing. She probably thought her daughter didn't really understand how creepy bleeding eyes are. She just thought it was the same as scraping her knee or something, and she took ketchup and put it on the doll to make it look like it was actually bleeding. But then it happened again and again and again, and Joan quickly realized that this wasn't ketchup. She got rid of her daughter's doll, but then things didn't stop. Whatever was attached to the doll didn't leave the family's home. One night Joan was sitting on the couch when she felt a grip on her arm. There was no one there, but she could feel something gripping down so hard it hurt and left a handprint. They had to have a priest come through and bless the house, but Joan always wished that she kept the doll to be blessed as well, because even though she threw it out, who knows where it could have ended up. At number 4 we have Caroline. This one is interesting. Now everyone agrees that Caroline is haunted, but some say she is harmless. The spirits who are attached to the doll, while being tricksters, they only like to bug people for laughs. They never do anything harmful. But some people say that the spirits attached to Caroline are all her previous owners, people that she caused to die so she could collect their souls. She lulls you into a false sense of security with her goofy antics, and then boom, you're dead and your spirit is forever attached to this doll. A classic silly goose maneuver to steal your soul. That trick is as old as time. At number 3 we have Joliet. This is one of the most horrific ongoing family curses attached to a doll. Joliet has been owned by the same family for 4 generations, and without fail the doll attacks the family in the same way every time. The doll is passed down from mother to daughter once the daughter is pregnant. She will give birth to a beautiful baby boy who will have 0 complications but will die just 3 days after being born. The next time the mother is pregnant, she will give birth to a healthy girl who will survive and one day be the new owner of the Joliet doll. And then the cycle continues. It seems like a horrible curse, but the family refuses to get rid of the doll. Maybe it's because they've come to terms with the curse and don't want to ruin any other family's life. At number 2 we have the SUZY doll. You're just trying to buy a nice thing for a kid, and the next thing you know, you gotta deal with a category 5 haunting in your house and you gotta call a priest. The doll was originally owned by a young girl named Heather Platt. She got it for her birthday, and like any little kid, she fell in love with the doll and named it Suzy almost immediately. What little Heather didn't know was that there was a horrible energy attached to the doll. Not long after the doll was in their home, things started going missing. Items in the home would be found broken, and one night Heather's mother saw a dark figure walk into the house. Then things really started getting out of hand when the doll started ripping out Heather's hair when she was sleeping. Not long after that, the family enlisted the help of Lorraine Warren, who is a famous paranormal investigator, to lock the horrible haunting away. Alright, for the number 1 spot we have one of the most legendary creepy dolls. Sophia was originally owned by a young girl, and she would take it to bed with her every night while her grandfather would read her a bedtime story. As she dozed off, her grandfather would always say the same sentence, "Dream with me." After this young girl's grandfather passed away, something strange started happening with the doll. When she would go to sleep at night, the doll would whisper to her, dream with me. Her parents caught wind of this and decided that the doll was haunted and it wasn't the best gift for a kid, so they wanted to get rid of it. But before they could, both of this young girl's parents died in an accident. Now the doll is in a museum and no longer says the phrase dream with me. Instead, it has been replaced with the much more terrifying phrase die with me.
Starting us off at number 10 is Elsa. Back in 2013, Emily Madonia was just living her life in Texas with her family and kids. Her daughter was gifted an Elsa doll from the movie Frozen, and the doll also had a button on it that when pressed would make her sing Let It Go. Favorite song? The year it came out, let's be real. Either way, all was well and good for about 2 years, after which the doll started singing in English and Spanish despite the family never changing the doll at all. Instead of throwing it away, they just never replaced the batteries, hoping it would just die, but it didn't. It kept singing and talking even when it was completely turned off. The family ended up throwing it away to find it back in their house weeks later. How is this doll transporting itself? I have no clue. None of the kids had brought it back, and so the parents started freaking out, understandably so. They threw it out again, but this time they wrapped it tightly inside a garbage bag and then put it into 2 other garbage bags before finally putting it in the bin. Safety measures had to be taken, people. It was then collected on garbage day and that was that. But it wasn't, because after the family got back from vacation, it was in their backyard once again. It even had a pen mark on it from years prior that kept moving spots on her body. Like, say no more. We do not want Elsa around us. Coming in at number 9 is Esmerelda, probably the most underrated Disney princess because she wasn't technically a princess, but I feel like she's my personal favorite along with Jasmine. Like, they're both so pretty and I just love them. This story was shared by Tamara from Washington DC, who said growing up Esmerelda was her favorite Disney character and she had the OOAK Esmeralda doll which she used to sleep with every night. Now as she grew older, she eventually stopped sleeping with the doll but kept it on her desk that had a few candles on it as well. Now weirdly enough, at random points in the night, her candles would come on by themselves and the door would have mysteriously moved on the desk. And if we recall from the movie, Frollo starts setting a bunch of houses on fire during his search for her. Paris is literally burning in the movie, and I feel like that somehow transcended the screen into the doll. I don't know how else the candles would be turning on by themselves, but also Esmeralda, that is a major safety hazard. You know that better than anyone. What are we doing? At number 8 we have Pocahontas. So this one comes from a now deleted Reddit user who said she had a Pocahontas Barbie doll when she was younger and it was creepy to say the least. Personally, Pocahontas is one of my favorite Disney princesses. She's gorgeous, I love what she stands for, and we have to stand a princess of color. We just have to. As another princess of color. No, I'm kidding. But I'm not though. Either way, the user shared that the doll was always kept in her bedroom growing up, but after the age of around 8, things got weird. Now to preface this, there were no windows in the user's room, but every day after coming back from school, she would find autumn leaves on her floor. And I mean, that just makes me think of the song Colors of the Wind in the movie where the leaves are just flying everywhere all pretty. She ended up getting rid of the doll a few months later and the leaves stopped appearing as soon as she did. Coincidence? I think not. Filling at number 7 slot is After Dark. Now It's a Small World is a water boat ride that's found in most of the Walt Disney parks and resorts around the world. Now the ride has over 300 audio animatronic dolls and they're all wearing traditional dresses from around the world, singing about global peace and unity. According to a cast member at one of the parks, which they refused to disclose which location they worked at, which I mean, fair enough, they shared that after dark many employees have seen the dolls come to life, may that be them switching positions with each other or disappearing altogether. The person further shared that they've also heard little giggles coming from the ride as well, which is not part of the soundtrack playing or anything, so I mean, where the hell are they coming from if not the dolls? Plot twist, probably the dolls. Now at number 6 is Frozen. I can't title this one Elsa because I've already done that once, but Frozen is still pretty self-explanatory. Now this one was shared by an anonymous Reddit user who claimed the Elsa doll they got for their daughter was cursed. I feel like Elsa's really causing some havoc, like come on now mate, like what is your problem? Actually she had a lot of problems in the movie, so I mean, okay, I get it. Either way, the parents shared that they got their kid an Elsa doll for her 7th birthday, but after putting it in her room started getting quite cold. The heating was on and the whole house house was the same temperature except the daughter's room. The family even called the electrician, but they claimed the heating was working perfectly fine, so they had no idea what was going on. Not suspecting the doll at all, the family had no idea what was wrong. One night the daughter ended up falling asleep in the living room with the doll, and the user put her in her bed but forgot about the doll in the living room. But the next morning they found the living room to be freezing and the daughter's bedroom to be warm. I mean, who was the culprit? Probably Elsa. Let's be real. Who hurt you, Elsa? Actually, many people. I need to stop asking who hurt Elsa. Coming in at number 5 is Belle. Now, I don't know whether I believe this one or not, but I'll share it with you guys anyway. So apparently this person had one of those little plush Belle dolls that she positioned right behind a candle. The doll's legs were kind of encasing the candle, and keep in mind this candle only had one wick. The person claimed that every time she put the candle on, it would melt and hollow out in the shape of Mickey Mouse's head. You know, like the 3 circles, 2 dots, 1 big dot. And if you have a candle, then you obviously know the wax hollows out around each wick, so if there's just 1 wick, it's just 1 circle around it. So someone make this make sense for me of how there've been 3 circles, like 1 wick, 3 circles. It's not adding up. At number 4 is Cinderella. Oh, I absolutely love this story. When I went to Disneyland Paris as a kid, I got this really detailed carriage that she comes along in, and the little mice and everything like that, and I would just always play with it and then pack it back into its box because the resale value, hello? No, I'm kidding, I was just very anal as a kid. Either way, this one comes from an anonymous Reddit user who said after doing some spring cleaning in their house, they decided to throw away a few of their old dolls, one of which was a Cinderella doll. Which is absolutely shocking, by the way, like the disrespect, how dare you throw her away? She didn't struggle against an evil stepmom and stepsisters for you to just throw her away on the curb. Clearly the doll felt the same way, because despite throwing the doll in the trash outside the house, the user found the doll back in their garage along with 2 mice. Like the user had never had any mice in their house, but suddenly they did. 2 mice, like are we getting Jacques and Gus vibes, or are we getting Jacques and Gus vibes? Like that's just too much of a coincidence, and even the user agreed, so she decided to keep the doll. I mean, if these 2 little cute mice are bringing the doll, I reckon you should just keep it. You know what I mean? It's not worth throwing it away. Filling our number 3 slot now is the Little Mermaid. Sweet, sweet Ariel, if only you had spoken up during the film. JK, sucks to suck cause you couldn't. I don't know why I'm coming for her, I actually quite like her as well. But anyway, this story comes from an anonymous Reddit user as well who shared that they had gotten an Ariel doll for their kid. The kid was obviously excited as hell and opened it as soon as they got home, but the weirdest part was her skin was wet to touch as soon as she came out of the box. Like this doll was untouched, unwetted if you will, yet she was still wet. Now finding that odd, the user took the doll back to the shop, but they refused to refund it as it had already been opened. Thinking it was just a malfunction with the box not being airtight, the parent dried the doll and that was that. The next morning when the kid woke up, the doll was wet again. No one had touched it since the night before, and it was dry the last time they checked. Weeks and weeks went by and the kid would wake up to find the doll wet night after night. I mean, clearly you can take the mermaid out of the ocean, but you can't take the ocean out of her. Like what kind of Walt Disney sorcery is that? Now at number 2 is Snow White. Fact of the day, Snow White was actually the first cartoon animation released by Disney, so she's actually the oldest princess of them all. Now this one was shared by Tim from Arkansas, who claimed the Snow White doll he bought for his daughter was probably the biggest mistake he could have made. The first night she was in the house, the bathroom mirror shattered in the middle of the night. And every consecutive night after that, every mirror shattered in the house one by one. The doll didn't even move from the place she was kept in, yet she was the only new addition to the house, so I mean, I don't want to point fingers, but I'm pointing fingers. And if we recall from the movie, the queen asks her magic mirror daily about who is the fairest of them all, and I guess no one can be fairer than Snow White. Clearly that's why she's out here shattering mirrors in Arkansas. Now growing up, I actually saw the Barbie version of Rapunzel and I watched it so many bloody times I can't even tell you guys. I had the Barbie version of pretty much every movie. I was such a Barbie fiend. Let's not talk about it. Either way, this one was shared by Claire in Scotland, who said she got a Rapunzel doll from a yard sale for like £5, and so she was pretty chuffed. The doll looked brand new and she thought it was a nice addition to her Disney princess doll collection, which everyone seems to have apparently. She had had the doll for about 2 months when she realized bits of her hair were falling off. off. Thinking it was made poorly, she brushed the hair and forgot about it. A week later, all the hair on Rapunzel had fallen off, and not only that, it was also nowhere to be found. Claire had a shelf for all her dolls, and you'd think the hair would have just fallen off and stayed on the shelf, but you'd be wrong. But that isn't even the mind-blowing part about this story, you guys. A month later, her hair actually grew back or reappeared somehow. After I read this, I was like that meme of that guy who's like, you're telling me this inanimate doll that has no real hair follicles lost its hair and then grew it back? Alrighty then. And that's it for today's video, guys. Honestly, I don't care about any of the stories shared in this video. I still love Disney. No one can take that away from me. Sue me. I also found it very odd how the characters' stories genuinely affected the curses or stories that these people shared. Like, I was shook. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and also tell me who your favorite Disney character is, because I'd love to know. Doesn't have to be a princess. Could be Jacques and Gus, for all I care. As always, I'm your host, Eamon Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. The ride has over 300 audio animatronic. The person further shared that they've... Okay, I can't see. That counts as Disney. Doesn't have to be a princess. So apparently this person had one of those little plush Belle dolls that she Two mice, like, are we getting Jacques? Is that his name, Jacques? It's definitely not Jack.
Oh, Jacques.
Jacques. I'm gonna do a little sneeze. Oh, wait, no. Yeah. Now this one was shared by Tim from... I'm just ridiculous. Now this one, no, straight face. Also, can we just talk about the pronunciation and the spelling of that word? Let's talk about that. Arkansas. She got a Rapunzel doll from a yard sale for about £5. Claire from Scotland, come on! I don't care how many stories well, I shared 10. I don't care how many, I don't care about, I don't care.
I don't fucking care, guys.
I don't fucking care. And that's it for me.